In today's episode, we're joined by John Huntinghouse. John is an award-winning published marketing executive who drives record results for high-growth startups and established brands. He is currently the vice president of marketing at Tab Bank, leading a dynamic team focused on revolutionizing the banking industry's marketing with innovative and customer-centric solutions. With an impressive 16 years of marketing experience in both B2B and B2C sectors, John has driven remarkable results and secured numerous awards for his campaigns. He holds an MBA from the University of Utah and has shared his vast knowledge by teaching over 500 students at various colleges, including his current teaching role at Weber State University. Beyond his professional life, John enjoys spending time with his wife, Kara, and their 3 children, Maya, Mason, and Aubrey, a true lover of pasta, the 49ers, and the writings of Ed Catmull. John brings a wealth of experience and a unique personal touch to everything he does. Stay tuned as we dive into the world of SEO with John, exploring trends, strategies, and his journey in this digital world. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Digital Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Eli Adams. Today's episode is brought to you by FireUsMarketing.com, where SEO solutions pave the way to digital excellence. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. That intro is a lot better than I gave you, so I love it. I might just have to borrow that now and use that as my new intro.
Yeah, absolutely. You actually wouldn't be the first. I've had people have me send it to them for other podcasts and speaking events. So
it's like legit. I'm like, man, it's like ChatGPT, man. I gave you something and you gave me a much better version of that. So well done.
I appreciate that. Well, John, I'm real excited to have you on here. And especially since this is, I haven't done a podcast yet explaining to the audience about this SEO series that comes up. So let me just take 1 second. As this is the very first episode coming out in this series of SEO podcasts, let me take just 1 second, kind of explain to the audience what they're in for. So really, for the next 2 to 3 months, I have lined up an incredible amount of talent around the SEO world to come and speak on very specific topics for SEO. John is laying the foundation here, talking about SEO 101, SEO Basics, the foundation of SEO. And we have everything from international SEO to enterprise SEO to B2B SEO, SaaS SEO, uncommon SEO tactics, how to get hired as an SEO. I'm not kidding. We have, last I checked, I think I had 29 or 30 different topics, which is going to allow me to post 2 different podcasts every single week from the first week in September until the end of the year. So we're going to have an incredible amount of SEO. And I actually would wager a guess that this is probably the most important one of those, because if you don't understand the basics taught by John here, the rest of it's probably not going to make sense. So you need to pay attention in this one and really understand the foundation of SEO before you get into some of the other stuff. But I'm hoping this series adds a lot of value to you listeners out there. And again, I appreciate you, John, taking the time today and jumping on talking about the basics of SEO. Let's just dive right into it. So tell us about yourself, John. Where are you from? What'd you want to be when you were little? Let's learn a little bit about John on a personal level, and how did you go from there to getting into the digital world?
Yeah, it's definitely not your traditional career path. Like I don't think most, teenagers, junior high kids are like thinking it's like, hey, when I grow up, I want to be a marketer, or I want to go into SEO or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like most marketers end up backdooring their way into marketing, and that's kind of what happened with me. Growing up, my dad's American, but my mom's Korean, and kind of to that cliche of, Korean parents just wanting their kids to be like doctors or lawyers. And what's funny is, my brother went to law school and he graduated from law school, and I was going to go to med school. And that was kind of the plan the whole time, all through undergrad. And everything I did was to build towards that step. And then ironically, I ended up having a conversation with a really good friend of mine, and we were just having lunch, and he ended up just having a throwaway comment that ended up changing my career. And he didn't mean it to be that. He was just curious. He was like, hey, like, what are the things that you study when you don't have to study anything? And it like just hit me like a ton of bricks. It was just weird because I'd been trying to chase this my entire life. And then when I finally got there, I was like, okay, well, maybe now I should actually evaluate if this is actually something I wanted to do. And one thing that I realized when he said that and asked me that question, and I just really started thinking a lot about it, is I never studied this unless I had to, right? Like I only studied it for schoolwork or homework, or I was required to do these things, but not because I just naturally was inclined to learn about it. So then I'm like, oh wait, like, reevaluating and like going back, and ended up in this, I call it my wilderness phase. I did a lot of different things. I went everything from politics to, starting on my own business and doing a lot of different things. And all the while still doing cardiovascular genetic research. That's kind of like what I did. And I worked at the Intermountain Heart Institute. But then I ended up taking, I got my MBA at the University of Utah. And during my MBA program, I heard about this class, and this class was on entrepreneurship, and it was taught by someone. They just said, hey, he gives out free pizza every single class, and you get free dinner. I'm like, sign me up. I heard that it was an easy class, and so I was like, it's an easy AA, it's dinner. I'm going to totally take that class. And I ended up taking the class by Rob Weberker, and it was transformational. Like it changed my life. It changed the way I view problems and like my worldview. It really kind of started in this, like, hey, how do you deal with uncertainty when you're creating new things? Like, what are those, how do you deal with uncertainty? And so I really started to dive into that. And then I ended up, meanwhile, like, my last, couple years in the MBA program, I had done this little side gig, kind of creating a blog. And that's ultimately how I got into marketing. Is we had created this blog back when bloggers were kind of like, a thing where everyone and their dog was trying to become a blogger. And I ended up like, hey, like we have this platform, we have a social media property that is fairly large. Is there a way for us to like lean into this and actually make it a full-time business? And that's what we did. And then we kind of pivoted it as a blog, and then it kind of became this influencer marketing agency. Before that was even a thing, right? Like there really weren't influencer marketing influence. Agencies working with influencers, trying to partner them with brands. And so we kind of leveraged the blog that we had created, kind of this local cult following that we had, and then kind of built it out more nationally. And then that's kind of how I got my way all the way back into marketing. So it was kind of a long twist and turn, and ironically, unfortunately or fortunately for my mom, I guess, so I never became a doctor. And even though my brother became, like, he graduated from law school, but then he realized he hates reading, which is like problematic if you want to be a lawyer. And so he's actually a sergeant now over in the Portland PD. So he's like,
oh, wow.
Hey, this is actually what I want to do, and so yeah, he dove into that. So
that's awesome. So different than what you expected as a kid, or what your mom expected as a kid.
Yeah,
but I imagine she's happy that you guys are happy and doing what you want, right? Or is she still like, I wish I had a doctor?
No, I'm pretty sure she still wishes she had a doctor. No, it's funny because like my mom, and I wish I had visuals so we could just show up here. Like I still have these texts. I have text messages from my mom. What's funny is my mom believes that I can do anything and be anything other than a marketer, right? Like other than what I actually do for a living. And so she'll send me a text and she's like, hey, do you have any eligibility left at the University of Utah to like be on their basketball team? And I was like, I didn't even make my junior high team, like, let alone like have any kind of thing like with the U of U.
Yeah.
Or she's like, hey, maybe next year you just really focus and you could be on the PGA Tour next year. I was like, no, like, yeah, I'm horrible at golf. I'm not a good golfer. But when it comes to marketing, like I feel like she feels like it's like a made up thing. Like it's not an actual job. And what's funny is my kids still talk about it. It's like a urban legend now, and within my family is, like my mom actually came over to my house and she gave me an envelope, and she's like, I know that you're a marketer and like you make no money in being a marketer. And so she gave me an envelope, and so I opened it up, and it was a coupon for a 99-cent Egg McMuffin at McDonald's. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? Like, okay, well, first of all, if this is going to make or break whether or not our family's going to be able to like eat, then like we're screwed, right? Like we're,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I just thought it was like, it was thoughtful, I guess, but
Yeah.
it was just weird. But she understands, and she's seen a lot of the success that we've had, and and she is proud of that. But
Yeah.
I do think like secretly she's like, I still wish I had a doctor or and a lawyer, but me and my brother we love to kind of just throw it back in her face a little bit, so it's kind of fun.
I don't think that's uncommon as a parent. They all want them, like parents want their kids to be better than them,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe unconsciously they want them to do it in their way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm going to teach you, son, how to be better than I was, but you have to do exactly what I say, right? And I don't think that's uncommon for most parents. What I love is that she has so much faith in you, even though it's like not marketing. It's like you can do anything you want. Like, I love that she like breathes that faith into you. And I also do think marketing is somewhat difficult to understand for some people, right?
It is.
And when I talk to my parents about it, sometimes they're like, well, like, I'm glad you're happy. But then when I hear them explain to other people what I do, they're like, some computer stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like, I don't go around fixing computers, but that's what I think most people think computer stuff is. So that's funny. So you may have accidentally fallen into it, but at what point did you say, I can see myself doing this for the rest of my life?
Yeah, so what was interesting is we actually started the blog just on social media. We created a Facebook page, and it really was just a way for us to create funny, humorous, culturally relevant memes, and this always dates me, right? Because like we came on the scene when memes were first first becoming a thing. Like it wasn't very popular, and we just loved it. We thought it was humorous, and so we did a lot of things that we thought were funny, um, for really just for me and my friends and family. And we created a Facebook fan page just because like I didn't know what else to do, and we just threw everything on there. And if you
Yeah.
actually go like to our first initial posts, like the first like 6 months, it's just a hodgepodge of just random crap, like almost like something you would send like via, Instagram Messenger, or Messenger or a text message now. It was just
Yeah.
me just dump posting just things that I thought were funny. And then all of a sudden it started and kind of built steam. And then where it really kind of transformed is that when we actually created a website, and then actually started writing around these topics and really started to kind of find our voice. And we ended up, we landed on the front page of BuzzFeed, and we had Perez Hilton like writing about us, and like we had a lot of like Good Morning America, and so we had a lot of
Wow.
like big tier one publications that were like highlighting a lot of the work we were doing. So it was at that point when I started realizing, hey, I have a voice, and people are recognizing that, and it's adding value to their commentary, and they found value in that. And as we started to kind of build this community and grow that, I mean, me and my wife, because we both started it together, we're like, maybe this is something that we have like this unique perspective that we can add, to the world, and
Yeah.
let's kind of double down into that. And then we really started in taking it from a hobby into a business. It's like, okay, what are the things that we really need to lean into? How do we grow and scale this thing? How do we start to create partnerships and work with businesses and so forth? And as we did that, that's where I'm like, okay, hey, I found something that was very interesting to me, something that I just love, and also something that I'm good at. And what I was able to do is leverage my former life when it comes to a lot of the genetic research that I used to do for the Intermountain Heart Institute.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to leverage the rigor, the academic rigor and data analysis from that world and transfer it into marketing. And that really
Yeah.
became one of my differentiators is, really in marketing that this was first when digital marketing was becoming a thing, and being able to look at data, break down the insights, understand it's like, hey, these are areas that we need to lean into or whatnot. And that's really where it started to kind of blow up.
That's powerful. I love the connection between the two, and I think there's a lot of people who do that from their previous life. If you're if you're good at what you've done in the past, there's a way to integrate it into marketing. I've interviewed people who have wanted to be lawyers or even were lawyers, and then they've changed and they use that same dedication, the attention to detail, and that's what propels them to really the next level. So, okay, so now you have this business, this influencer blog business. How did you go from there to working in the banking industry?
Well, that's a really good question. So ended up, I had kind of this influencer marketing kind of blogging world that we started. Ended up going to KSL here locally and
Okay.
working for KSL on their TV and radio. And, I thought it was going to be like kind of this my dream job. I thought this was going to be amazing. And, culturally, it just wasn't a great fit. I wasn't a great fit for them, and for me, they weren't really a great fit for me. And so like, we had a lot of friction there. And so about 9 months later, ended up going into an agency. And so I worked over at Epic Marketing and loved it. Like that, that's really from a career standpoint where I really started to take off. I had all of these years of experience of like being hands-on in the weeds, doing everything from SEO to social media marketing and, paid search and social. And then it kind of all coalesced at Epic, where we were able to refine it and not just do it for these one-off, just for my business. I was able to, take that learning and that experience and be able to share, implement that across, all kinds of different businesses and different verticals. And so Epic was super awesome and it was fun. And we did a lot of really cool campaigns and work at that time. And then ended up going over at Tab. And so Tab, they didn't have a VP of marketing role at Tab, but this opportunity kind of came up. And they're like, hey, like, we'll create this new position called the VP of marketing here at Tab. And if, we would love to have you come over and kind of do what you're doing and really add some digital prowess to what we're trying to do at Tab. And so I came over and, there's a lot of heavy lifting when I first came over and a lot of things that we needed to do. But over the last 5 years, we were able to do a lot of, transformative work and be able to change not only the department, but really help reshape the bank in terms of where we want to go and continue to grow. And we've seen some phenomenal success, since 2019. We've hit like record revenue each year and for the third year in a row, we were listed as one of the 50 fastest growing companies in Utah. And so, yeah, we've just seen a lot of tremendous growth over the last 5 years. And that's how I got to where I'm at now.
That's awesome. Tell me about something that is, exciting for you in your current role. You wake up in the morning, you're like, I can't wait to do this. Like, what is that drives you to continue to be better and help Tab grow?
Yeah. So, initially when I first got here at Tab, there's just a lot of fires that we needed to put out. There's just a lot of low-hanging things we needed to fix and processes to be in place. We needed to build out a team. We needed a team that could, for lack of a better term, was more technical and could really add a lot of value in addition to the staff that was already there and be able to kind of combine both worlds. But now we're at the point where, okay, we've done that. We've done all of the low-hanging optimizations. We created these systems, created these processes, had a lot of success, here at Tab. Now what, right? Like, where do we grow from here? And one of the things that I've always loved, and, a lot of my friends who are marketers will ask, like, oh, I don't know, that's kind of sucks to, work at a bank, like it's so regulated. And it's true. Like there's a lot of hoops, a lot of compliance, a lot of regulations you have to deal with. You can't, being in an agency, I'm used to just rapid fire. Like once we have an idea, run with it and kind of launch it. And you have to be much more focused. And there's a lot of things you have to go through on Tab. But what I love about this current opportunity is the ability to be able to like find a way to transform what, for lack of a better term, a stale industry, right? And especially when it comes to marketing, because there are certain businesses and industries that are marketing led, like the Nikes of the world, and marketing drives the business. Banks are not, right? Like banks are CFO led. Um, they're legal led, and that's fine because
Yeah.
soundness, safety and soundness matters when it comes to our banking industries. But that being said, I feel like there's so much opportunity for us to like, hey, let's just rethink how banks do marketing. And
Yeah.
every time we talk to an agency or work with a partner, and they're like, hey, what are some competitors, or some comps that we can kind of look at? I almost always like, don't look at them. Like, don't look at other
Yeah.
banks because I don't want to do that. I want to do something different.
Mm.
And, and we're starting in that. Just, we're really at the beginning phase of that. And so over the next year or two, a lot of the projects and campaigns that we have like on the docket, like are going to be pretty exciting. And I'm
Nice.
excited to kind of shake up, the traditional bank marketing genre, if you will.
Good for you. That's I imagine that's kind of a hard area in marketing to sort of break through. So I'm excited to see what you come up
Yeah.
with over the next year. I worked at Extra Space Storage for a little
I,
while, and I remember thinking the same thing. I remember thinking like storage units are not sexy. Like they're not. It's not like a
this,
consumable. It's not like a shoe.
yeah.
The stats show that people on average only get a storage unit once in their lifetime, and it's usually around a depressing time, whether it's
Yeah.
divorce or a death or kids moving out or something. And so it's like, okay, we got to figure out how to market to somebody once in a lifetime when they're sad. And so I
That,
think banking's probably a little more sexy than that, but I can kind of empathize where you're coming from with that.
I I will say though, like I remember, a few years ago, like just going to a conference where Extra Space was like kind of on that main stage and kind of talking about it, and I was geeking out with the stuff
Yeah.
that Extra Space was doing, especially on the digital front. I'm like, dude, this is insane. This is nuts. I was like, and to your point, like you're taking like relatively boring industry that's fairly safe, but I mean, the work that they were doing, I was so
Yeah.
impressed. I was like, this is like legit.
Yeah, they do some good work, and it's really all about the data too. That's one thing I
Yep.
really respected about them is like it wasn't like, oh, the owner wants this or the CMO says we should do it that way, even though the data says go this way. They were very data driven, and that made presentations really compelling too. When you were talking about how marketing worked in that, I mean, they're a multi-billion-dollar company that's traded on the public stock exchange. Like, and there's only four. There's only four. Companies that are like storage units that are traded on the stock exchange, and so like they got their stuff together.
Yeah, for sure. So that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So if we were to dig into the tactical side of things a little bit, let's talk about some SEO. So um, let's assume that whoever is listening is pretty new. Maybe they own a business, but they've never really got into SEO. Maybe don't even know what SEO stands for. Give us sort of the baseline of like, what is SEO?
Yeah, I mean, really SEO. I mean, it just stands for search engine optimization, and it really is just helping search engines find your business online, right? Like if you're just to put it in a nutshell, it's obviously crazy crucial. I mean, back in the early days of SEO, I remember we were just trying to get people to understand the value of a website, right? And they're like, well, that's stupid. It's like redundant with everything that I'm
Yeah,
already doing. But fast forward to today, the day and age now, I mean, it's table stakes, right? It's like SEO is just so crucial and so important. And even people who don't understand SEO understand that it's important. They just don't understand how to jump into it. But really at the end of the day, all you're trying to do is find ways to work, and transform a website. And so that search engines, regardless of where it's from, like can find and match your website to customers who have that intent.
okay. So in one of the episodes that we're going to talk about talks about really breaking down the search engine algorithms. And once it's out, I'll link, if you're on
Yep.
YouTube listening, I'll link it right here. If it's in the show notes or for audio, I'll link it there. But at a high level, help us understand how do search engines like Google determine ranking for a website?
Yeah, I mean, you can really go deep dive in this, and I'm sure that's what you'll do in kind of the next podcast. But really,
Hmm.
when you're looking and trying to determine like how does a website rank? Like one, is it relevant, right? And I mean, this is really where Google kind of changed the game. Because back in the day, it's like you would search for whatever, and like all kinds of crap would come up, like things that were just not relevant at all. And
Hmm.
Google was kind of really the first to help, you know, like incentivize businesses to be relevant to what people were searching for. So relevance, how well the content on the page matches to the intent, or the search query that people are typing into Google. The quality, obviously, like it's, the grammar, quality, credibility of the content. Are you getting backlinks from, reputable sources? User experience, speed, mobile friendliness, ease of navigation. Kind of mentioned backlinks. Backlinks is like a big deal when it comes to SEO because it just helps provide relevance to that page, to your page. And just say, hey, don't just take our word for it. These are other places that are also kind of validating that what we're saying is true and that like we're a legit, credible business. And, obviously engagements metrics all matter, like when it comes to your title and the meta description, like are people, like when they see you in the search results, are they clicking through? How much time are they spending on your site? So, like relevance, quality, user experience, all of that, all of those components are like kind of the baseline. When we talk about content, like that all fits into those, kind of big buckets.
Great. So you mentioned a handful of things that I want to dig into a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a buzzword that I think if you're new to SEO, you'll hear often is on-page and off-page SEO. And
Yep.
you mentioned both of them. Explain the difference, why they're both important. Let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, on page is just anything that's like really happening on the website itself, right? So this is content. This is like your HTML, like the coding, like your headers, internal linking, everything that, these are all factors that deal with the page itself versus off page. Like these are things that are happening off your website. So like a backlink. So a backlink is coming from somewhere else that can impact your rankings. Social media, mentions and relevance and people, traffic coming from that, influencer outreach. So basically, if high level, if you're trying to break it down, like on page, it's just like, how do we optimize elements of my page, my website, the things that are going on there. Off page is everything that's outside of it that affects your search engine, your ranking on search engines when it comes to your website.
So one of the key components to on-page SEO is finding the right keywords or topics. Can you walk us through how someone would do basic keyword research?
Yeah, and I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole in and of itself. And keyword research is just, I mean, it's such a foundational part when it comes to SEO. And there's a ton of tools out there. You have, Google, you have Keyword Planner, you have SEMrush, all kinds of different tools that you can use to help you do this. But really, when you're doing your keyword research, so, the first thing is you just need to like identify what basic terms are relevant to your businesses, right? Like what are these search queries? What are people searching for that is relevant to you? And then once you kind of build that out, you can utilize a lot of those tools to kind of expand that keyword list, in terms of, you have your basic keywords and then you kind of expand it out to things that might be adjacent or something that, would be interesting or something that you might not know. There's a ton of insights that we come and people finding our business is like through these adjacent keywords that we never thought of. But when you actually look at the intent behind that, it's like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You also kind of, as you're doing your keyword research, you do a lot of analyzing the competition, right? So you're trying to understand like what are the keywords your competitors are ranking for, like what is not on your list. Like you did your initial list, but like all of your competitors are ranking for this. Like there's your keyword gaps, and then once you kind of build out your keywords, kind of identify all of them. The fact of the matter is like there's a bazillion of them, right? Like you just can't equally rank them all at this, at the same priority. So then you got to prioritize. It's like, what's the most important keyword for our business? What's the lowest hanging fruit? And so, that priority, the way that you go about prioritizing your keywords is different, depending on the business. Some kind of focus more on, hey, what are the low hanging fruits? What are some of the keywords that we're ranking, in the 10 to 20 range? That's like, we're almost right there on the first page. Whereas others, there's like, let's just focus on business impact. Like, we need these keywords, we need to rank for them. This is where our focus is going to be on building out that keyword priority list. And so, but yeah, when you're just trying to do your basic keyword, when you're just trying to get into it, really it is identifying it, expanding it, to those adjacent keywords, analyzing like where other people are, what's appearing on the SERP list, right? Like when you are going into, and you take those keywords and you put it into Google, like what is ranking, and kind of looking at some of those competitors and those websites and try to understand, kind of reverse engineer in a way, how to kind of build, pages that will rank.
Yeah, you said a word there that I think you and I look at as a pretty normal word, but for someone who's never been in the industry, what is SERP?
Yeah, so it's basically the search engine results page, right? Which sounds weird to me. Like every time I say that, I'm like, I feel like it's wrong. Like I never actually say search, like at least the SEO, I say, search engine optimization. So like it feels right, but like I never say search engine results page, but yeah, it's basically, when we're talking about search, it's just like, what are the results when when you type into Google a keyword, and like, what are the initial results? And so when we say SERPs, that's what we're referring to.
Nice. And so you'd want to go to the SERP to find out your competition, right? So you're like, okay, so here's the keyword. How difficult is it going to be to rank against Nike.com, right? Or Wikipedia, like whatever is up there. You're looking at competition. But you're also looking for what you mentioned is the intent, right? So an example I like to use, I used to work at Young Living Essential Oils, and I was always told you need to rank #1 for lavender. But if you go type in lavender, like, do you know if you're ranking for the smell, the color, the oil, the flower? All of them are a possibility, right? And if you type in lavender, I'm telling you right now, it's not oil. So lavender oil or lavender essential oil makes more sense from an intent standpoint. So if you're doing your research and you're like, this is going to be the best keyword, go to the SERPs page first and be like, is that actually what Google is delivering? Because it doesn't matter. Like you'll never rank for it for the intent that you want if that's not what Google is delivering from their side, right? So thanks for that clarification. So now I know there's different types of SEO. I know there's local, there's regional, there's national, there's international. Let's dig in a little bit. Like, what is local SEO? And if I'm a business owner that has a physical location, how can I get started with that?
Yeah, I mean, and local and national and regional SEO, like they all have different components to this, but for sure, like if you're trying to optimize local, I mean, the low hanging fruit here, right, is like restaurants or stores or businesses that like have maybe like a mom and pop shop even, but like anything that's relevant, where, you have a McDonald's, right? Like, okay, like you have a McDonald's app, up here in close to South Weaver. Like that's not going to be relevant. Like that specific McDonald's is not going to be relevant to anyone in St. George. So like these are going to be relevant search results for the people who are in that area. So for sure, table stakes in here, right, is like a Google My Business listing, like making sure you create it, optimizing those listings, local, getting those citations, getting those reviews, obviously around that content, making sure that like the content is in there, like what people are searching for, and you can see how this works yourself, right? Like if you're trying to type in, off the top of my head, something like, I don't know, I'll use a stupid example, like AA batteries, right? I need to buy AA batteries. Like you'll notice that in the results, it'll say like, oh, this business mentions having AA batteries, right? Like, those keywords matter. Like the content that you put into those listings are really, really important, and creating like, that localized content that's relevant to the area, so that, because all you're trying to do, like whether you're local, regional, like big picture, all you're trying to do is like, Google has this query, it has this user, it has an intent. and you're just trying to help Google as best as possible to be as clear as possible what you are and that you're relevant to that. And so when you look at it through that lens, those are kind of some of the basics when it comes to local SEO.
Yeah, I like that. And if you don't have a Google My Business page set up right now, it's free. Takes 10 minutes to set up. Like, it's not that hard. Go get it done. And it's what it does for you is it says, Google, here's my address. And then they're going to look at the perimeter. And if anybody is within X amount of miles from you, there's a higher likelihood you'll rank and show up for them versus somebody who's, 50 miles away or whatever, like you're saying with the McDonald's. So if somebody goes to Google and they type in, how do I improve my website with SEO? Some of the most common things that come up in trainings are title tags, meta tags, sitemap, and robots. Can you help explain those?
Yeah. So, title tags are just the title of the page, right? And when you are looking at your SERP, and so you start to see the results, the first thing you're going to be looking at, right, is going to be looking at what the title is, right? Like, that's our first way to kind of understand, the relevance of a specific search result. Your meta tags are going to be your description. So we look at the page, but then it's it may or may not be fully transparent as to whether or not this is the right one or not. And then you'll underneath the title tag or the title, you'll see the meta description. And so the meta description just gives some, context, and it helps to understand it just a little bit more as to, whether or not this search result is going to be relevant for you. And so this is really important when it comes to click-through rates we talked about earlier. But, it's one of the factors that Google kind of looks at. It's hey, how often, when you are appearing in these search results, how often are people clicking through and getting to your page? And one way to optimize towards that, right, is to kind of think through, what keywords, what verbiage do you want to utilize in your title tags and your meta tags, that will help people to convert over. Okay. So, and sitemaps, all they're trying to do, it's just a way to index, right? It's a way for these search engines to understand, hey, what's on the page, what's the hierarchy, what's going on with the website, so that it can have a better understanding of, what's going on within that page. And so, sitemaps, and depending on how you go about creating, I remember back in the day, literally manually create, typing it out. And it was and I always do it wrong. And it was never exactly right. Which makes me just feel so old right now. But now, most of the pages now, if you're doing a WordPress site or something, it's super easy. Yeah, it's super easy. Just to create it. That's automatic. That kind of gets part of it. But yeah, the sitemaps really just, they just help you understand, or it helps the search engine understand what's going on, and gives a little bit of context to more than just that page.
And the robots?
Yeah, the robots is just, it's funny because it's really the same thing. It's just to help understand crawl traffic. So we talked about the sitemaps just being kind of a guide as to what for the search engines to understand what's going on. And so the robots text files are just used to manage web crawler traffic. And so that's how Google works, or not just Google, but that's how search engines work. And so they crawl the internet, they crawl the websites, they follow links to one page to another, and then they crawl the information, and that's where they kind of store that. So, but yeah, robots files are, I'm sure you could dive into the more technical elements of this, but it really is just a way for people to manage the crawler traffic.
Yeah, it's almost, they're almost opposing forces. So the sitemap is Google, we want you to crawl this. Robots is, hey, this exists, but we don't really care that it's in the index file. So it doesn't really matter if it shows up in Google. It could be a login page or something that's less important that really doesn't have to rank. So that's in the robots, and then the sitemap is here's the hierarchy, here's what we do want you to crawl. So running an agency and doing coaching for many years, one of the things I hear a lot, which I'm sure you heard a lot at the agency as well, is why does SEO take so long?
Well, it's very true. And the fact of the matter is it's just what it takes, right? Like it takes a long time. When you're looking at trying to rank, like everybody, like the biggest pet peeve, like you pitch a client and they're like, okay, love everything that you're saying. Everything's great. Love the strategy. Is this going to take 3-4 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks? And it's like, no, like that's not how this works, right? Because in a lot of ways, it's like trust, right? Like if you're viewing, like you're meeting someone for the first time, and with no context, no nothing, it's like, okay, I kind of like what I initially see, but like I just don't have enough information. And not to mention, like it just takes time. So, when we're looking at initial results, like especially those initial improvements, you're looking at 3 to 6 months, like at minimum when you're first just getting into it. And heaven forbid it's like from scratch, right? Like it's like there's nothing there. And you're building everything from scratch. It's going to take, a lot longer. But then when you're looking at more long-term SEO factors, it's going to take easily 6 to 12 months when you're starting to see like significant results, or you're competing against really competitive keywords, and you're trying to go with people who've been doing this for decades now, like who have been doing this for a long time, who've built all this authority, who've built all this trust. It just takes time when you start to think through all of these factors versus like a paid social campaign. Like I can have that up the next day, right? Like I can create that, launch that, and kind of build it out. And honestly, when you're looking at results, there's a lot of factors, but one thing that's like people don't realize is, I remember when I first was kind of going into SEO, I just thought it was, you kind of run into this bias of like information bias where it's, everything about your business. Like you have all of this context, all of it because you've been working in it day in and day out. But then when you put it out there, you don't realize how wrong, like how different other people view it. And this comes with like keywords. And like, there's so many times where like, you'll have a client, it's like, hey, you brought up the lavender example, right? You're like, oh, hey, like this is what I want to rank for. It's like, well, to you, that makes sense. And I understand where that's coming from your perspective. But the reality is everyone else's perspective is like, nobody cares. Like nobody cares about, like when I'm typing in lavender, I'm not looking for oils, it's typically around the color or, like other factors. And Google knows that, like Google has all of that information. And so another reason why it takes some time is because you have to understand some of the context and nuances of why people are searching and like the intent behind it. When you get into really complicated, like more sophisticated product lines, like we have some working capital or asset-based lending content, like there's so much nuance between, they're different products and they behave differently, but there's nuances there. And to really understand some of those nuances also takes time, and you kind of have to look at the results and see what's working, what's not working. And, there's a lot of experimentation that goes around that. So you can start to understand what that intent is. Someone who's typing in, $1 million homes near me, like the exact same keywords, two very different intents, right? You have someone who might be actually looking to buy $1 million home, versus, probably the vast majority of people who are just wanting to browse what $1 million homes look like, probably like $3 or $4 million now. Like, but anyways,
I know, right?
so, but, like it's hard, like when you look at the keyword and you're doing your keyword research, you're like $1 million home near me, and you're trying to sell $1 million home. It's very intuitive. It's like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. Like that's the keyword we want to utilize. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, we have all kinds of wrong traffic. Like the traffic that are coming to our websites, it's not the right people. And then, so a lot of that context just takes time.
Absolutely. I think that you mentioned in the beginning, it's kind of like trust. And I love that analogy. Like, I think the other component to it taking a long time is to keep spammers out. So imagine from a trust standpoint, imagine you're trying to court somebody and you're required to make your decision like within a week or two, right? And turns out that person ends up being, crazy or whatever. Like through a courtship, you have to go through different seasons and you have to like find out, about the person in different ways and different scenarios, and how they handle stress and how they handle when they're sick and all of that. The same thing
Yeah.
with these search engines. Like if there was a way to manipulate the search engine, these spammers are going to find it. Right. And so these search engines are like, well, let's give it time. Let's see if you're in it for the long haul or if you're just throwing money at it to rank really fast. And that happened in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if like people out there listening remember, Yahoo and Google in the beginning, but sometimes there were some search results that were just crap. Right. And then Google would release an algorithm update and it would get rid of that crap and they would start over, and then spammers would figure out how to come back and get in. And so either way, so I love the idea of relating it to trust, and it helps in so many different ways to understand that. John, before we get into the future of SEO, are there any other thoughts or questions that I might have forgotten for a new person coming into SEO wanting to know about foundational stuff? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think of, when it comes to like, basic stuff, like, like a question that I get asked a lot is like, okay, that's cool. You've told me why it matters, or someone who's actually trying to learn. And so this actually happens a lot with students, right? They're like, okay, like I want to learn a little bit more about SEO, how it actually works. Like what are some of the tools for someone who's just getting started? And so like tools matter. Those like, whenever you're learning something new, like having the right tool for the job is really important. So just looking through, Google Analytics, understanding Google Search Console, Yoast SEO if you have WordPress, because WordPress is everywhere. And what's funny is like Yoast was actually like when I was a blogger and I was just first starting to learn things, they would all give you like recommendations and stuff, and you're like, okay, like I don't even know if that's true. So and then go down a rabbit hole, but or SEMrush or something like that. Like these are like kind of basic tools that you start to understand SEO well, or a lot better, because you just start messing around with them. And it helps you from keyword research to understanding, traffic, your website traffic, and like Google Analytics. And just like Google Analytics by itself can be a beast for someone who's brand new. But then you just start at high levels, like, okay, just big picture. What is this data telling me? And if I don't know what that is, then that's what I would start to research, right? Like, I don't understand what I'm seeing. So I'm going to take the metrics that I'm seeing, the abbreviations, and, that's marketers are just known for creating abbreviations to no end, right? Like, and just looking it up, and like, it's a really fast way of also learning, basic SEO and digital marketing generally, is by just taking some of these tools. And it's like, if they give you information or data that you don't understand what it means, like, doing some research around that can be really helpful in your learning.
Yeah, good call. You made me think of a handful of tools while you were talking about that. And I think if I was just beginning, like not a tool that's free, non-personalized is Google Trends. So go put in your keywords into Google Trends. You'll see if it's going up, if it's going down. You can localize it, all of that. So Google Trends is number one. I think Google Search Console is number two, as far as like user experience. It's super easy. Google Analytics is a little bit more difficult. Then you get into some of the paid tools like SEMrush, which, by the way, I don't know if you heard this, but they officially came out and they say it's called SEMrush now, which is so annoying. Anybody who's been in the industry more than 10 years is upset about that. Yeah, but it's official for them.
It's like one of those, it's like, we used to always, VRBO, right? It's like, but it's actually Verbo. And so it's like, all right, well, okay. Well, it's good to know, Dan.
Yeah. So SEM, I'm always going to call it SEMrush.
Yeah, I know.
So SEMrush, Ahrefs is another one. SpyFu is another one. And those are all, they have like free components with a paid upgrade. And then when you get enterprise, there's tools like Bright Edge that are really good tools as well. But at every level, no matter where you're at, there's a different tool that will help you. And data is very important with SEO, just like you were talking about your background with your heart research. I think data is important, whether you have that background or not. Like, you need to look at the data and find out where to go. So where do you see the future going in SEO?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because it's like, you know, a lot of people, kind of talk about this, and it's really easy to give, these kind of generalized answers in terms of what we're going to see. You know, I remember like, and it's still important, right? It's something like voice search. Like
Yeah.
when that was first on the map and like everyone was talking about it, and it's like, hey, this is like the future of search. And then like, and this is going to be crazy game changing. And it is an important element, because there is a growing importance, because we have a lot of those voice assistant devices and whatnot. But
Yeah.
I mean, the elephant in the room, right, is AI.
Yep.
It's like, it's the first time Google specifically is like, okay, we have a monopoly, like something that threatens our monopoly, right?
Yeah.
Around this. And you saw how quickly that they were able to pivot, and like the speed and urgency of which they took, the whole OpenAI coming out, shows you how important they themselves view this, right? And then all of a sudden you're
Yeah.
starting to see these AI enabled uh, search results that are starting to pop up. And I think when you're looking at, AI and machine learning in conjunction, obviously it's just going to get more and more prevalent. You're going to start to see a lot more context, a lot, on the plus side, right? Like they can take, history, they understand, like they have a lot of context around you, like more of the personalization when it comes to search results. They have context, and then they have your search history. They know what you've been looking at or just recently talking about, so it can help you get to those answers a little bit better. But then at the same time, like the flip side is the same thing that's always been there. It's like there's inherent biases and heuristics that are part of that AI, machine. But when you're looking at like where the future of AI is going to be, exactly where it's going to be, I think that's what makes it exciting, is because it's like there's a lot of ideas out there, but like we're all kind of learning and seeing like what's been relatively stable. Like, I mean, yes,
Yeah.
they've had, massive algorithm updates when it comes, Google specifically, like they'll come out with massive algorithm changes and people will lose ranking overnight, but they learn to quickly, re-rank. They understand like how the algorithms work. But when it
Hmm.
comes to something like what we're experiencing right now, I actually find it so much fun and exciting. One, because it's so transformational that it allows like people who have been in this space forever. Sometimes you can use experience as a barrier of entry for new players to come in. But if you're someone who's just learning SEO, just trying to get into this space, it's actually a really exciting time because it kind of somewhat levels the playing field because it's new for everyone, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a whole new ball game. And so while there's the basic building blocks, and Google had that massive leak back in May, or I
Yeah.
can't remember, or March, like where it came out and kind of. And then what was funny is when we pulled back the curtain, it's like, oh, we have all these leaked documents, and then everyone's like, oh, well, for the most part, it's kind of what we thought it was, right? Like it wasn't like this like super silver bullet that like everyone.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think you have your foundational principles and things that you're learning, and a lot of the stuff that you're going to go into, with a lot of these other guests, that you're going to build upon. But for sure, AI, I think it's going to be a big deal when it comes to this.
For sure. I just saw a post by Chris Long, who's actually going to be on the podcast talking about technical SEO,
Yeah.
where he just announced that ChatGPT has just announced their beta version that you can sign up for of Search GPT.
Yep.
So it will be a competition for Google.
Yep.
Google is still like the dominating force in the industry, but it is definitely starting to sway quite a bit, and it'll be interesting to see what experience Search GPT comes up with, and see how those in the SEO world adapt. And like, there's always been
Yeah.
scary things in the past come out, and you're like, oh my gosh,
Yep.
SEO is dead, and then you're like, no, we just got to change a little bit, we got to adapt. And so should be very interesting. Well, John, at the end of every podcast, I ask 2 different questions. The first one is, if you could go back to your younger self and give advice, what would that be?
Well, I mean, we kind of talked about this at the beginning of the podcast, but really it would be to lean into A, what you're good at, and B, like, what are your interests, right? And a lot of that, from a career standpoint, was dictated, by my parents. And for, I think, a lot of younger people, it just takes some time to kind of branch out and to lean into like, what am I actually good at? And to realize there are so many opportunities to do things. Like, really what I wanted to do is help people, right? Like, at the end of the day, I was like, I wanted to become a doctor because I wanted to help people. But what I didn't realize is, like, there's so many ways to help people, right? Like, you don't just have to be a doctor in order to find ways to help individuals. And so, trying to instill a little bit more of that confidence is like, hey, yeah, being a doctor can and could be a very great career. But like, for you specifically, like, finding something like, not just that you like, not just a hobby, but something that you're good at, and something that you can drill down and really build a career around. It's something that I wish I would have. I mean, it would have saved me, 15 years of my life, right? Like, that I could have, progressed even further than where I am. But yeah, for sure, that would probably be the biggest. So lean into something that you love, but then something that you can kind of develop and become really, really good at.
Yeah, love it. What books, podcasts, or leaders currently inspire you?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it in the bio. My kind of the Mount Rushmore for me, but like, is like, Ed Catmull is one, the former president of Walt Disney Animation and co-founder of Pixar. His book is actually, right, well, you can't quite see it, but it's up here. It's called Creativity Inc. It is, I don't recommend a ton of books, but Creativity Inc. is like something that I just love. And because it helps you understand not just creative, like in the sense of design, but like building new things, right? And like, when you're trying to build a new team or a new project, or you're trying to create, new research, how do you deal with ambiguity? How do you deal with like not knowing what the answers are? And it is a great story and entertaining story about how Pixar came to be. But I think like it's almost kind of like my my marketing Bible that I reference it all the time. So love Creativity Inc. The other thing to kind of go away from marketing a little bit is actually, so Scott Galloway is someone that I listen to a lot and also have this book behind me. But I think it's really important for marketers to really understand business, like, and business principles, and understand like sometimes we have our own marketing vernaculars and our own lingo and our own metrics, and we get so siloed in that we kind of miss the forest, through the trees here, and we get so narrow that we miss the bigger picture of how businesses work. And listening to a lot of his work and like understanding like, hey, like, what do executives think about? Like, what are some of the, business goals, when they face certain things, not just through a marketing lens, but helping, to create some diversity and looking at different lenses. I think it's been really helpful.
Very cool. John, how can people get in touch with you if they want to?
Probably the easiest way is on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. And so just John Huntinghouse, and just search it up. I'm pretty much the only Huntinghouse out there. So, on LinkedIn. So, the other one's like my brother. So, but yeah, if you want to find me, just go ahead on LinkedIn.
Very cool. I'll put it up on the screen on YouTube, and then I'll put it in the show notes for everyone listening as well, so you can get in touch with John. But John, I appreciate you taking the time to jump on and chat with us today and give us your pretty awesome upbringing and story and how you got into the digital world, as well as answering all these questions about the SEO Foundation and SEO Basics. I really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. And everyone else who's listening out there, we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.